Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca. I'm a fish biologist, an ichthyologist specialising in freshwater fishes, and I'm a PhD student studying the evolution and morphology of Loricariidae catfishes, which are plecos, and looking at comparing it to their ecology in different manners. So today I'm going to talk about one of these Loricariidae, and this is Chaetostoma. So Chaetostoma is found throughout South America, mostly distributed, it seems, throughout the Andes, and often found in mountain and hill streams, sometimes down into marginal drainages such as in Brazil and Venezuela. This is the genus that you might have seen but never really taken a double look at. There is 48 species in this genus, and it is the third largest, so one of the largest. And this is currently known. Comparing to Ancistrus, which is around 60 currently described species when that paper was written, which I put in the references below. And there's many more. Hypostomus, which is the largest genus in Loricariidae, so the largest group of plecos, I guess. So, what about the morphology of Chaetostoma? Chaetostoma can grow anywhere from around 5 to 30 centimetre standard length, so they are far from dwarfs, and it really depends on the species. Many of the largest we don't particularly see in captivity that frequently, but they do appear in specialist stores such as periplankton. But in captivity, their difficulty has meant that we rarely see them attain such sizes. Like Ancistrus, they lack plating or dermal plating at the snout region of the head, make it look soft almost. Whereas most Loricariidae, it will go to the edge of the head and then round. They tend to be wider bodied but still deep-ish compared to many Ancistrus, and the eyes, I think, are much more dorsally placed than many other genera. They tend to be, I think, a lot smaller. They're almost like Ancistrus macrophthalmus without the tentacles. But there's still a lot of diversity in Chaetostoma, particularly in their patterning. They're nothing like, I think, Ancistrus there's a lot of trends you see with Ancistrus patterning. But they're very unique fishes, with the only similar genus being Ancistrus, although they're not even closely related. So what about the water parameters? This varies depending on the species. Some species going below 20 to 21 centigrade, so more of an unheated tank, whereas others like a wide seasonal variation between 21 to 30 degrees centigrade. And that's not to say there is a Chaetostoma for every tank. Those with such a range, they do want that seasonal temperature change that comes with the wet and the dry season. So that is worth bearing in mind, and they're certainly not going to work with goldfish at all. Do not even consider. There's no way they're going to be able to get to food at all, or any carp. So what about the conductivity? So I am not going to discuss parameters such as the ones that you don't see in papers regarded to what these fishes experience in the wild, like KH, even GH, so carbonate harness, general harness. TDS you do see, this wasn't referenced in the paper. What are the ones? Oh, I don't know. But these species are very adaptable to a wide range of conductivities, likely due to their habitat, and it will vary depending on the actual species we're talking about. Chaetostoma jorapuro and Chaetostoma formose. Formose is actually a really common species within the UK, are commonly found at conductivities between 20 to 260 microsiemens, which means they're adapted to quite a range, but probably only for very short periods. And these commonly found species are also found at pHs of around 7.1 to 8.9. But bear in mind that UK tap water is actually double that conductivity of 260 microsiemens. Conductivity here, it might be low compared to that pH, which replicates almost UK tap water, but conductivity covers maybe a wider variety of variables, so it's not entirely, it wouldn't be reliable to look at pH when thinking about what water parameters to keep these fishes at. And bear in mind that that range is because of that seasonal variations. The conductivity, like the temperature, well, the conductivity will likely rise as the temperature rises and evaporation in the dry season, in the wet season. So in that dry season, well, in the wet season, that temperature is going to drop as the rainfall comes in, and the conductivity is also going to drop, and that pH. These values probably are based on the geology of the area, probably the geology upstream particularly, I guess, that will give these variables or these parameters. So that's what is particularly, it's kind of difficult to gauge an entire view of what those parameters are unless you look at the actual ecology and geology of the area. And maybe people have taken values at different parts of the river, but this can vary a lot. So these are actually where the fish were recorded. And it is also, when it comes to temperature, bear in mind air temperature and water temperature will differ quite a bit due to different reasons. So current and velocity, these fishes are very well adapted for fast rapids, hill stream habitats, and if you just look at their morphology, this is, well, it just describes it particularly well. In the aquarium, it's important to maintain higher oxygen levels, and higher oxygen levels, the oxygen saturation goes up as temperature decreases. So if you're going to keep them at high temperatures, then they're not going to probably get the oxygen they're actually adapted for. And also water velocity comes into, so a stagnant sort of tank is not going to do any good. You want quite a lot of surface movement. And it's very similar to quite a few different ancestors as well. So the habitat, generally the habitat of Chaetostoma is often described as being rocky, with a strong current, rocks, stones, pebbles, with loads of different, but there is occasionally like silt and sands, but also like different growth, so that would be like bacterial biofilms and things like that that they're actually feeding on. And I have provided a video of, well, the only video I could find of what it's like in their wild habitat. So interestingly enough, they share similar habitats to many ancestors who are also found in that Andes region, and they're not particularly well studied. They share a lot of the same morphology, and some of those ancestors lack tentacles. These ancestors tend to also share similar mouth morphology of a long, wide jaws, lacking plating around the nasal region, which all ancestors really have, apart from a few. Same with Chaetostoma. There's one that doesn't have that, that's described. But they're likely feeding on the same thing. It's an element of convergent evolution, because Ancistrus and Chaetostoma are not closely related. They're members of different tribes within the subfamily Hypostominae. Chaetostoma has actually also been identified in subterranean cave environments, where Chaetostoma microps was observed actually climbing the walls of the cave, showing the strength of the mouth and even morphology of these fishes. And there was a slow, what seemed like a slow current going over these walls of the cave. So what about the dietary ecology? Chaetostoma are described as having elongate jaws with many numerous teeth. This is associated with algivory, and this means that they're probably feeding on mostly, obviously, algaes, but also bacteria, protozoa, and a variety of different organisms. Given where they're found, it's most likely to be a lot of photosynthetic ones. If they're found in environments which are particularly dark, they're not going to be as many photosynthetic microbes. Microbes also including really those protozoa, which I don't think count as microbes particularly. It's important to recognise that this niche might sound herbivorous, but it's not by those standards, because herbivory, carnivory, omnivory is really focused on that mammalian sort of feeding ecology, rather than aquatics, where there's so many different organisms that replicate or are similar to similar to protozoa, but they're actually animals, so like bryozoa. So they're probably going to be feeding on bryozoa, sponges, which are still animals. They just don't look particularly like what we recognise as animals, which is such a large group, but they're mostly going to probably be feeding on those algae, those biofilms and stuff like that, periplankton. So they are periplanktivores, I guess, but there hasn't been that much studying particularly on it. We do know that they feed on a wide diversity of different algae from many different clays. So if you're going to feed a diet, make sure it doesn't just have one algae or two. It needs to have as many as possible. And your tank is not going to sustain a fish. It needs it to be fed some sort of captive diet. They have also occasionally been found to feed on fly larvae, so diptera larvae, but very occasionally. So I wouldn't feed it mainly as part of a diet if you're feeding other fish in the tank. Maybe they get one or two very occasionally. Bear in mind, a lot of algae-based diets do contain usually some sort of fish, krill, something like that meal. They probably won't be able to access as many of those nutrients, or like calcium, phosphorus, from fish meal, opposed to if they were getting it from one that they would naturally eat in the wild. But whether they can actually access it from the fly larvae because they're not eating that much is another thing, given that insects have a lot of chitin. With the algae, bear in mind that vegetables do not replicate algae. This diversity of algae is important as well, because there'll be many different vitamins, minerals, amino acids, that different algae are going to have different levels, maybe more exclusive ones, different clades of algae. So getting that variety is a good idea, not just spirulina or Corellia. Getting a wide diversity of those algae, and look at the ingredients on a packet. And then when it comes to those carnivorous things, maybe it really depends. I would, Repashy Super Green is probably one of the better ones here, given that it's 80% algae, it is vegan. Not that vegan really matters. It doesn't contain, it means that you could probably feed to the levels you want of different, of those invertebrates, or insects. Yeah, frozen foods. I don't think you get frozen like black soldier larvae, but I think it would float, which would be a major issue. Mosquito larva is available frozen, and that could probably work as an alternative. But they are flies, I think. Yeah, so it would work. So what about their care in captivity? Chaetostoma, while commonly kept, is not the most understood genus. It requires revision in its taxonomy, therefore we don't know that much about its ecology. Hence this is a very short video, as most of my, potentially, if I was talking about other taxa of animals, I could do, well, even like discus, I think you could do videos and videos on them. But this is an entire genus, and there's like, apart from going into taxonomy, there isn't as much on them, and their taxonomy requires so much revision. Regardless of their popularity, few have managed to breed members of this genus. It's likely due to their lack of popularity within true hobbyists that are going to put the effort in, the hard work to breed them. You don't see many adults, you don't see many larger specimens of this species in captivity. So I think there is a very high mortality that we don't see. And the same with Ancistrus, Barren Ancistrus, you don't see entirely how bad the mortality is. They are not easy to spawn, as is quite evident, and in the aquarium it's best to keep them with tank mates that their requirements overlap. So thinking about slow feeders, or if they're gonna be fast feeders, maybe not having so many. Think about times you're going to feed them. Personally, I don't recommend keeping with particular cichlids. There are fast feeders, particularly like Geophagus, although their sort of setup wouldn't really correlate. So thinking about something that's slow feeder but also likes those temperatures, the fast flow, there's plenty of fishes in the from South America and even Asia that could probably work really well in the setup like this. Anyway, I'm going to end this video here. If you want to know about any other genera, if I have enough footage, I could potentially do one. And any questions I should be happy to answer. And thank you for watching.